This is the story of Shannon Crawley. Greensboro, North Carolina, Jameer Stroud, who was a police officer, started dating his co-worker, 911 dispatcher, 27-year-old Sharon Crawley. The two were just friends, but it turned intimate around the end of 2004, even though Jameer was in a full-blown relationship with 25-year-old Denita Smith, who was a graduate student in North Carolina University in Durham. Denita would gush over Jameer, often saying that she had the perfect boyfriend. So it's clear that she had no idea about the double life he was living. Around the end of 2005, Shannon gets pregnant, and Jameer is very vocal about not wanting to have a child with her. So she had to get an abortion. And I guess the pregnancy must have scared him because after that, he called it quits. He said that he was going to focus on Denita and Denita only. Jameer proposed to Denita in November of 2006, and everything looked on the up and up until about a month later. The newly engaged couple was holding hand in hand walking into church, and Jameer sees Shannon giving him that death stare. On the morning of January 4th, 2007, Shannon drove to Denita's campus apartments, hid, and waited for her to leave out for work that morning. And when Denita left out, Shannon shot her point blank in the back of the head. A maintenance man who was riding around on his golf cart heard the shot. And right when he was about to call the police, he seen a woman running hysterically with her face covered, get into a burgundy Ford Explorer and left. The police got there around 8:30 a.m., but they didn't see anything, so they left. It wasn't until 10 a.m. when a resident from Danita's building was coming out, and that's when he discovered her body at the bottom of the steps. He initially thought that she had fell, but quickly seen that she was shot in the back of the head. Jameer drove from Greensboro to Durham, which is about 50 miles, when he heard that something happened at Danita's apartment. When he got to the scene, he stated his relationship with Denita, but he wasn't really questioned like that. The maintenance man told the police everything he could remember about the lady fleeing the scene. It wasn't until the next day where Jameer found out that they were looking for somebody who was driving a burgundy Ford Explorer. He immediately called the detectives and confessed about his infidelity. The police went to question Shannon at her job, and she said she don't even know who Denita is and that she's never owned a gun a day in her life. And she was taking her child to a doctor's appointment at the time of the murders. But when the police was leaving, a co-worker of Shannon's pulled them to the side and said, "Hey, now I did sell her a gun, but she said it was for protection against Jameer and that he was harassing her." Shannon also told the detectives that she's never even been to Durham. And they like, how is that? When your cell phone pinged on their towers the day before and the day of the murders. It was also gunshot residue found on the steering wheel and the gear shift. January 9th, 5 days after the murder, even though they didn't have any DNA at the scene of the crime, nor did they have the murder weapon, but they had enough to still arrest Shannon. But she made bond rather quickly and she moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, while out on bond, Shannon goes to the detectives with a whole nother story. She admitted to buying the gun, yes. She says she only bought it because Jameer was threatening her life. And on the day of the murder, Jameer forced her to drive to Durham. When he got out the car to confront Denita, she stayed in the car and said after he shot Denita, he got back in the car and hid in the back seat and forced her to drive back home. Shannon, you know somebody seen you, right? June 20th, 2008, while still out on bond, Shannon called the police on Jameer and said that he drove all the way to Charlotte, which was 120 miles, by the way, and sexually assaulted her with a knife, actually penetrated her with a knife. She did go to the doctor and get a rape kit and it tested negative for semen. She did have a mark on her thigh and her neck, and her labia needed stitches, but it was never any evidence that Jameer was in Charlotte at that time. Shannon said, "If you don't believe me, he took the knife, so go check his trash can." And just so happened on June 23rd, Jameer was taking out his trash and happened to see the knife. He called the police himself, telling them about the knife. One of his neighbors even said that they seen somebody pull up and get out with dark clothing on and throw something in his trash can. Shannon, girl. Her trial started February of 2010, and during the trial, her defense team presented some recordings of what's supposed to be Jameer confessing to the murder of Denita. But the judge is like, hold on, man. These recordings don't sound about the right. It didn't even sound like Jameer. The recordings were labeled phony after phone records and towers were checked. On February 22nd, 2010, Shannon Crawley was sentenced to life without parole. She was convicted of first-degree murder. RIP to Denita Smith. What I read about her, she just sounded like she just had a good head on her shoulder. She was supposed to walk the stage the following month. And to think that you got the perfect partner and he out here with a whole nother life and you don't have no clue. You leaving out your apartment and this lady just snuck you. Like, come on, man. Now, Yellow Tape, do y'all think they ever stop even messing around?